Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host. And on this show, we sort of jump between different kinds of healing modalities, different kinds of business strategies, and we are ideally always rooted in the energetics, the magic, the sort of undercurrent of frequency that is running through our lives and businesses. And when we focus on that, we have the opportunity to expand into greater and greater possibilities. So I'm really excited to have a powerful leader and guide and very tuned in being with me here on the line today. Hang tight and we'll be back in just a sec. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. Awesome. So Galactic Ashley channels guidance for those seeking intimacy with the divine as source originally intended. She uses light language frequencies and works with your soul's guidance system to facilitate high frequency healing transmissions and encoded activations. She desires a world filled with leaders led by love. Her work focuses on the intersection of cosmic consciousness and embodied wisdom. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Hi, thank you. It's an honor to be here and to get to know you through our interactions and to just be exchanging energy in this way.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm stoked for this episode. So, one of the things I love to do at the beginning of the show is just ask you sort of how did you find your way to doing this work? There's a lot of people out there listening who might be in the early stages of growing their business, wondering, can I actually make a living doing this, or is my stuff too far out for the mainstream? And you are, I think, from this end of the screen, doing some far out stuff really well. So, I'd love to hear how you got into doing the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. I always feel, and I guess it isn't true, but I always feel like people really love to have this story where all of a sudden there was this major transition between sort of like living in the quote unquote matrix and then not living in it and then living this like spiritually expanded life. And for me, while the story isn't boring, it's always been there. So essentially in the second grade, I had my first divine encounter. I went to a private school and we had some missionaries come in, and it was a Christian school. And they asked us, like, does anybody want to ask Jesus into their heart? And they were talking about it, and I don't remember what they were saying, but all of this just energy started like moving through me, and I was like, yes. And so I remember like grabbing a really good friend of mine, and I said, let's do this. And he was like, okay. And so we ran up to the teachers and we are like, we want to do this. And so they said, okay. So we had to like dress up the next day, and they basically performed this, they didn't call it this, but what I would consider was a ceremony. And when we were sort of opening up this energy field, basically it was like literally the heavens parted. And I was just like, I had this divine encounter, and I was like bathed in basically divine bliss, and it came through. And I really feel that this was also when the earth frequencies came up, and she basically supported me on this, what has become this ever narrowing path of initiations. And I consider this like a really sovereign act of love. And I've been going through a process of reclaiming my body over and over and over and over and over again. I was an only child. And so for the first chunk of my life, I lived sort of out in nature, out on a ranch. And so I kind of always say that the beings are the ones who raised me. So the majority of my teachers in this lifetime, and I don't mean like, I feel like everyone is our teacher and everything is our teacher, but I'm talking about, in a spiritual sense. I've been really learning from energies, and so one of the mantras that I have had like throughout my life, like basically starting in second grade, and I was very connected before then, but this was just a very like conscious moment that stands out, is basically, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And I literally would say that before every basketball free throw. I say that now when I work with plant medicine. I say that this is just like a mantra that I've just been like saying all of the time. And I think a lot of that is because I'm really, really here to hold space for people in a really deep way. And I feel very connected to the death consciousness and to the divine. And I'm really here to seek intimacy with the divine. So how does one like how do you transition this into like a life path? I will absolutely say that even though I've been connected and been communicating to the point of where when I had friends that were dying in high school, whether it was through suicide or car accidents or just like illness, I would write letters to them after they died, and this was like how I was experiencing mediumship. I would just sort of see things. There was a part of me that knew not to really say anything because I tried saying it a few times, like to some classmates, and that didn't really work out that well, and it was just fine. I did go to a small school, so there was already kind of like this energy of even if you don't want to, we need to kind of accept everyone even if there's weird mean girl stuff going on. So I went to a pretty small school and I think that that was helpful, but I also have this like bend inside of me that I know that a lot of spiritual people don't have always is I get a lot of energy from being around people. So there is a pretty big like extroverted quality in me that I'm just really grateful for, and I can also be by myself. So because it's like being with myself versus being by myself and knowing that there's always beings there and there's always energy to kind of connect with. So
Yeah.
I would say was begging the universe, like, when can I, like, put up my I'm a psychic shingle like out on the outside of my house? And when can I, like, officially do this? And I had to wait like a while. And part of that was because it's not spiritual bypassing, but they were basically saying that I would use my connection as basically a way to not be in my body. And that wasn't the goal. And so it wasn't until later actually with like I had gotten married and there's like a house. And so there was this sort of realm of sort of stability. And they were like, here you go. Like literally a being came into the house with like I would consider an Andromedan frequency. They put their hand on my shoulder and I was like, oh, it is go time. And there's just like this whole download that came in. And then I did it. And it was great. I was like, I've been waiting. I have been waiting. So, but there was a whole process, and over and over and over and over and over again, I am shown to trust the process. And so I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that there's a divine birth date to every level of this expansion. And that includes like hanging your hat and saying, I do this work now.
Yeah.
And I think that's really valuable for people to hear. I know I sort of preach that quite often is that we're pushing and we want to bring this offering to life. And it's like, yes, and you got to trust that it is on its own timeline, just like you can't squeeze a baby out before it's ready. You can't
Right.
squeeze a new course or a new program out if it's not fucking ready to come. You got to
Yeah.
honor its own timeline and its like birthing process. So I love that. I love how organic it was and that, you were ready to go when that tap on the shoulder literally came.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it could have come way sooner, like according to me. It's spiritual escapism. That was the term that they used. So it's
Yeah.
like I was always looking up down like into the ocean or up into the sky, being like what? Like what why? Like what am I doing here? What is going on? Really helped me. But for me with all of this, like it wasn't that I wasn't ready at a spiritual level. I'm really big on embodiment, and particularly as a channel, if something comes through me like and I haven't heard it before, like it means that I'm going to have to walk some fiery path that has to do with that, because I believe, for me, it's just for me, that I can't bring something through that I don't have some kind of relationship with. And if I don't have a relationship with me, that's just a sign that that is coming.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like hang on. And so
Okay,
for
here we
me
go.
it's
Yeah.
the human part really needed to catch up to the spiritual part. And that's kind of how my life has been. And my, it's like I came in front loading the first chunk of my life with like a massive amount of trauma so that I could really work through it. And I'm still working through it. But that's the connection that allows me to take this knowledge and previous memories and actually make it embodied wisdom so that it becomes a frequency that emanates out of me. So it's beyond the words that we're using and beyond anything that's happening in the courses or in a session. It's really the energetic frequency that is coming through my bones. So it's really doing the work. And
Yeah.
so
That's such a relief too, that it doesn't matter what you say, but the words
technically,
are almost, yeah, they're useful and they're definitely helpful when you're marketing something, of course, and growing a business, but also
yeah.
the words are there as a basically like a boat to ferry across the energy that you're emitting. And that's really the point of doing our work as entrepreneurs, is that we're tuning to and expanding that frequency that we truly are when we're willing to become it. And that's what sharing ourselves in our business is about, is letting that frequency be broadcast and letting people resonate to it and arrive to receive it. So I love that. And I just love how much similarity I see in your story to mine, like minus the details. And I'm sure the traumas were different, but in hindsight, being able to so fully acknowledge that every single one of those trauma events and years of abuse and things that happened were part of my sort of required regimen to evolve through and become me because of healing, because of looking at that, because of being willing to be with what was in it for me and finding that thread. And like you said, that resonant frequency that we arrive at, or that we continue stepping into and becoming more of, is the work that we're here to do. And it is the work that people are here to receive from us. So I just love that so much. I want to dig into that. I love how you organically brought it to where I was
Okay.
wanting to go next, which is the embodied wisdom part. What does it look like to not being embodying our wisdom, and what is different when we find a way to embody it?
And I also feel like embodiment is like this, hashtag embodiment. Like,
Mhm. Yeah, it's
it's like
a
it's a trendy thing.
catchphrase these days.
Yeah, and I'm not just saying that I'm like the master of all of this. In fact, in the last few years, I've been working with plant medicine pretty intensely, and I'm really, really passionate not about the plant medicine itself and building those relationships, but the dragons always talk about. And so, for those of you that don't know, I channel the dragon consciousness, and I really identify as actually being a dragon. And so, there's this part of me that there's a human and dragon cooperation that is happening inside of this sort of physical structure. So the dragons bring up how important it is to fall in love with the process of whatever it is that you're doing. Even if that process is painful and maybe filled with grief, and maybe you're not drawn to that, but I tend to be like moth to the flame, kind of like what's going on here. But with the plant medicine has really, really like flipped some sort of energy fields inside of me, and we've been doing like a ton of like deep work. And so while I have the intention to always embody everything that I am bringing through and doing the like to the best of my ability to, and I do this in the courses and the channeling and the light language and everything, because I know a lot of people actually teach to leave the body in order to experience these things. And there's kind of like multiple things that are going on in that situation. But the plants have really like laid out like this massive, massive terrain of like the trauma that is still really patterned deep in my bones, in my blood, like in my body. And so I'm just doing the work of sort of releasing that out of my body. And there's this huge part of me that is like, how the heck have I even had any sort of connection with the divine? How do I channel? Like, how do I do anything that I've been able to do? And it's a really challenging process. And I think that just as humans, so much is going on inside of our bodies, and being more comfortable with the idea of discomfort and pain, and kind of not re traumatizing yourself, but just sort of getting comfortable with those energies is really beneficial. And so for me, I think the embodiment process is really quite complex. And that was another thing. I wanted to sit with plant medicine like over 10 years ago. And I remember standing there and like asking, and I was like in the jungle, like out in Guatemala, like in a pyramid. And what I was really saying is, I don't want to go back to the United States because I had been in the Peace Corps, and then I had left to go work in Guatemala to teach documentary arts to children whose parents were garbage pickers, and there was a lot of gang violence and other things that were going on. And I basically didn't want to come back to the United States. So I was like, I want to work with a shaman. I want to work with plant medicine. And this is what I want. And just like all things having to do with timing, it doesn't get to be my timeline. And now that I'm like really deep in it, I'm like, oh, there's no way I would have been able to handle any of this like 10 years ago. And it's been a beautiful, incredibly powerful process. And so, no, do you need plant medicine to embody these things? No. I was already working on embodying a lot of this with the dragons. The dragons are really, really big on going into your subconscious to the best of your ability. So I would really like ask them to come in to basically kind of knock me out into like a really deep trance state so that I could go in and work with these frequencies that are really creating interference with what I am trying to co-create in this external environment and in this life that we're living, which could be like a business, it could be money, all of the things that are like sort of coming up in the belief systems and what does it mean to be a woman? Because there was a period of time where I was like thinking about having a child, and all of a sudden I just got whacked with this thing that was like, I don't have a good relationship with my mom. So how, and power was also something that I really struggled with, like the idea of power. I hadn't quite navigated. It's not power over, it's power with. And all of a sudden this download came in. It's like, it's power with, not power over. And how can you become something that you hate? So how can I be a mother if I'm like essentially at the time hate my own mother? I mean, I don't hate her, but there's like a lot of
Yeah.
stuff in that relationship that we don't need to get into right now. And then how can you be powerful if you hate power? And then this whole idea, the dragons were like, there's this whole idea of like your divine feminine is masquerading as masculine. And I think this is a really common thing that comes up with women. So it's really empowering to like get into what does it mean to be a woman, and to sort of work through that with really not trying to identify what the divine feminine is, because I think as soon as we start doing that, it's our brain telling us like what we think it is, when really we all have a unique expression of what the divine feminine is in us, whether we are an embodied man or an embodied woman or transgender or whatever it is. But what is the divine feminine, and how does that seek to express itself through you? Because a lot of times for me, it's going to be like these dark goddesses. It's going to be these dragon energies. It's going to be the death consciousness. And sometimes it's going to be some mothering energies. But just what does that mean, and how does it come through you? And then when we start really working with these energies, then the way in which we express ourselves and start navigating and kind of basically working with the quantum fields, because what we are unconscious of is still connected to what we are conscious of. And those frequencies are creating interference with what we're consciously trying to do. So if I'm like, I want $1 million, but in my subconscious, there's like, you don't deserve that. And what about like all this ancestral trauma and all these other things? Those are absolutely going like messing with
The
this
frequency you're
clear
putting out.
focus.
Yeah.
Which is why you can't just sit in your room and go, I'm going to manifest this and I'm just going to think happy thoughts about it. And I'm not like dissing The Secret or any of those.
No, but there's more to that than that equation usually is talked about. Yeah.
And I also feel that if practicing working with your body, if we really want to manifest money, finances, prosperity, we're in the year of the dragon this year, and the prosperity dragons have been coming up like pretty big recently. We have to be in our bodies, right? Because what we're working with material. And so if we're out of our bodies, it becomes really challenging to create something in this dimensional realm. And there's a lot of people that are already trying to ditch the body to be in this like 5D earth where there isn't money and where there isn't this and where there isn't that. To me, we're taking our bodies with us And in order to do that, we have to work with our body. We have to drop the density out of our body, and we have to bring the enlightenment into the physical structure so that it becomes less dense, because we're meant to take the body with us. And the reason why we're meant to take the body with us is because of all of the chaos and the trauma and all of the choices that we have made with the earth. And her body also needs to go, and her body needs to take us with us. Otherwise, she would have ascended already and all of us would be dead. Like it's like, in a lot of ways, she's like slowed it down so that all of the life forms on her don't explode. Right. And so to me, this is why some of this energy just feels so intense right now. And when there's intensity like this, wherever there's tension and wherever there's potential like rips in the seam, or where things have been sewn over, those things are going to open, and they're going to break up. And so I would love for people to really embrace this idea of like wealth and having it, because it's the people that are going to be like led by love that I want to have like all of the money, because they're going to want to invest that money in other people. And then this money becomes this beautiful thing, rather than this like gross thing that a lot of people feel that money is dirty and these people shouldn't have the money, and the 1% and the this and the that. It's like, well, we can all sort of co-create it together as well, simultaneously, while money structures are just doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I like that focus on your body is part of what is ascending, that you're not ditching your body to get to these places. And the body is the only thing that needs money. The body is the part of you in this physical reality where money is a thing. And so, yeah, part of you honoring you and caring for you is allowing your body to have the prosperity and wealth that it needs to invest in itself, to create environments that feel good to it, to put food inside of it that is nourishing. I just got a structured water device that I'm like amped on, and it came in the mail yesterday, and I'm like, we're leveling up, body, like here we go. Because yeah, the molecules that I'm putting in my body are now in a more, coherent state. And how's that going to feed into my own expansion? So yeah, there's so many pieces and components to that. I love that you're bringing that work forward. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that light language course that you've got coming up right now?
I have a light language activation and healing program that is starting a day or two after this airs, but we're still going to be taking people in for the first few weeks if it feels like it resonates. You can sign up for a free discovery session to connect with me so we can chat about it if you want, or just directly sign up if you feel the guidance. But essentially, and this happens in the channeling courses and the other courses that I teach, while like we're meeting around the idea and the specific intent of having our light language activated, both through our voices. It includes our body. It includes creating art, because light language is written, it's spoken, it's toned, it's sound, it comes through our physical bodies, it comes through our hands. We are connecting because of that. But what's happening underneath all of this is an opportunity to really clear and heal energy from your throat, energy from your voice. Oftentimes people will come in. This reminds me of a post that you just posted about how it took you a really long time to call yourself an artist. I could barely call myself an artist after I had a piece of paper that I was holding that said I had a master's in fine art. So
I have a BA in art too.
I really completely get that. And the sad thing about that is that we are both the creators and the created ones. And the quickest way for us to get into divine alignment is to do an act of creativity. There is no way that we can't be creators, because that is exactly how we're designed. And so all of these things, all of these trauma patterns, these incoherencies and inconsistencies that exist within our body, we get to work with those, because they will come up. And just the act of being in a course just triggers people. And I'm really here to hold a container that's very, very safe, and to allow people to kind of be triggered, while at the same time to be divinely witnessed in whatever their pain is, whatever their story is. And the beauty of light language is that it is the healing tool. I don't even like calling it a tool, but it's like the healing gift that each one of us has, that brings in a high frequency energy that comes through us, that is really designed by our soul to be the healing balm of exactly what we need. So it's one of our most profound, powerful medicines that exists within us, like innately in our nature. And so that's what we get to work with in this course. But we're also working with past lifetimes because sometimes we have to heal and release those in order to access the light language codes. And if you're somebody that already has light language that's activated, this is a way that we can work in and expand it even beyond what you currently have. And then usually at least half of the people in the group are already practitioners, and then the other half like aren't, but they're very pretty much serious in their own, Spanish words are coming for some reason, in their own personal development. So it's usually really exciting. It's like, an intimate group. Intimacy is a really big word for me, and I think that intimacy requires a lot of work and embodiment and getting, figuring out what makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's vulnerable. Real intimacy is through vulnerability and actually allowing ourselves to be witnessed and sometimes held. Beautiful. So anybody out there who's listening, if you're listening in real time and it's, 2024 and it's the beginning of March, definitely go and check it out. I'm betting that this isn't the only time you're ever running this program. So probably go check out, what's your website or best place for people to follow you?
Yeah, this is actually my 5th year running this program. And just so you all know, it's not like a canned course. I'm very tuned into everybody that is present. So I've had people, this is their 5th year taking it because it's different every single time. But you can find me at galacticashley.com or on Instagram at galacticashley.activates.
Awesome. So definitely go and follow this magical being and get some more juicy wisdom in your life. I feel like you've shared so much magic already on this call today, but I like to sort of close it out by asking if there's any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today.
I don't know if this is coming through. It's just hang in there. That's kind of like, it feels like that's what's happening right now. It's just like, hang in there. It's gonna be okay. And I know that that sounds cheesy, but I'm feeling like pretty emotional about it. I think we're kind of in for a bumpy ride, and we have been in for a bumpy ride, and that it's going to be okay. And I really know that it doesn't feel like that. And there's just a lot of death and grief energies that have been coming up and coming out. And so the more that you're able to show up in any capacity to do your best at any point in time, wherever you are, I would say that's really where the power is just practicing showing up, especially when it doesn't feel perfect, because there really isn't any such thing as perfection or golden child syndrome or whatever it is, which it's really just a way for us to protect ourselves. I know that I have experienced this. Like, I want to know everything. And while I'm trusting everything and just hope that everything works out perfectly, and it will work out perfectly if we like release the control part and sort of work on those energies. But I guess the parting wisdom here is that it is going to be okay. And I know that it doesn't feel like that at all.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and doing your best and also acknowledging that what you've got to give is your best sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's okay if it's not full capacity all the time, that what you've got and your willingness to show up, even if it's not full capacity, is still doing your best. That's a valuable thing to acknowledge.
And I know that there's a lot of people that think like, oh, I wish I would have known this then. And it's like, right, but you didn't, and you still showed up, you did your best, and then we get to learn. I'm really passionate about learning, and I always want to keep learning, and I'm constantly asking, like, what can I know from this? What can I learn from this? And sometimes I'm taken back into previous sections of this lifetime, and then I get to relearn through it because there's more expansive states and spaces in that moment. And so if you can fall in love with learning, which I think has been so maimed in our sort of school system about having to have the right answer and having to know something as if there is a right answer. And that's another thing the beings always say, and I hope that this might bring some sort of soothing energy to people, is there is no such thing as right and wrong, which we know that, right? I mean, we know this like theoretically if you've been in sort of the spiritual world for a while. But what I like to think of this as is that we're asking for guidance. We're not asking for one single answer, because there is no such thing as one single answer, because we are constantly shifting and changing. And so if we're constantly reaching to our higher selves, to the divine wisdom that exists within us, or the beings that we're working with, to remember that what you're receiving is guidance, that you get to take your own sovereignty and your own will, your divine will and your courage to actually take that guidance and make something out of it, or actually take action on it, while understanding that that guidance is still going to shift a little bit. And you can keep asking the same questions. I call this like the practice of soul inquiry, like really compassionate curiosity and question asking, because people get really stuck and like really tightened up because they know what they know what the guidance is, but they're afraid of it because they already know what it is. Because if they let themselves hear the guidance, it's going to create a massive amount of change in their life. It means they're going to have to leave a relationship sometimes, or they're going to have to make some kind of shift, or they're going to have to leave their job. There's some kind of loss that's involved, or they're just afraid because they think there's only one answer, but there isn't. It's guidance, and that guidance is always changing and shifting with you. So you keep asking questions. I feel like the power that unlocks everything that we need to know is really in the soul inquiry of like opening. That is the key that unlocks the door, so that we can actually open and like breathe and sort of see and receive the information that is available to all of us all the time. And then having these human bodies, then we get to take action on those things. We're just reminding ourselves it's going to be okay.
It'll be okay. Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much for all that you've shared, Ashley. And thank you everyone out there for listening. I just love how everything you just sort of summarized and dropped there at the end is like a perfect segue into the catchphrase that I say at the end of every episode, which is don't forget to keep asking big questions and taking bold action, because you're here for a reason.
Yes, that's right. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And yeah, if you dug this episode, if you feel called to, please share it with a friend, send it to your homie, whoever you think might really resonate or get some value out of hearing this right now. Yeah, we are grateful for you spreading the word. And it is a huge contribution in someone else's world when you bless them with a little bit of magic or wisdom that you've come across. So be the spreader of the word. And we'll catch you next week for another episode. And don't forget to go check out Galactic Ashley and all the magic that she's putting out in the world. Have a wonderful day. Bye.